Hey, there we are. All right, microphone. I think I'm hot. James, are you there?
Yes, I am. Hello.
Okay.
Still here. I was just muted as all.
Oh, okay. Excellent. All right, there we go. Hold on. Say that one more time.
Yes, I am.
Okay, good. Just making sure that I
I
wasn't.
was just muted. That's all. I think that's what I said.
Yes, yes, yes. Just want to make sure. Okay, everything's a little bit hot over here. Bring that down a pinch. All right. I think that we're. I think that we're good. It took me so long to set up that I'm not even looking at the monitoring in YouTube to see how things are going. I didn't run any kind of live stream like primer, so nobody listened to like 3 minutes of a song or something.
Hmm.
Running into this one, but how's it going, everybody? I only had so much time to promote on this one to make sure that everything was copacetic and there weren't too many bumps in the road. But I'm honored to have James True here. You guys know that I've talked about how you would notice me on James True's channel whenever he would upload many of his airships because I'm on his Patreon and yeah, I've been a big supporter for quite a while. We met during the famous 5-5 event, and through just all the brilliance of things, I've always loved the way his mind works. I've always loved his empathic approach to the relations and the dealings of people in the midst of understanding some of the madness, some of the evil, and some of the other funny things out there. And today we wanted to dive into something that I was delighted that James brought it up. I didn't want to make him talk about something that was right in the pocket of what I'm doing with Heidegger, right? Because talking about the
Hmm.
Mandela effect is, getting into all sorts of questions about time and space, which is what Heidegger's Being and Time is inherently about on a very personalized, dissective, intra detailed level, right? And so like that's what we're here for today. And if you don't know James very well, he's written a bunch of books. He's got an excellent channel. He's also got his Patreon, which has a lot of awesome tidbits, as well as just like all the little exclusives and things. It's hard to always explain, but it's always about that awesome experience of like the hands-on kind of having those conversations, which they really show in those airships, which have always been awesome. So just before we get going, James, give yourself the most proper of introductions that you can, and if you want to mention your books and things too, and then we'll also do that towards the end.
I am James from Org. No, I'm just kidding. Yeah, James True is my my born name. Um, I'm. Let me see. I grew up in the Southeast. My latest book is Black Eye Club. It explores Hades and this idea of being able to take a serum and see things that you couldn't see before. I would call myself a philosopher, but I don't have the academic credentials to do that, so I call myself a sophist. And I really believe that it's a perfect opportunity for us to embrace the Pythagorean cult model of thinking, where all of us are simply finding groups where we dissect what we're experiencing in the world and just have a an opportunity to discuss it. And so if there's anything that I'm a resource that I'm providing for the world, I would hope that I could be known for that, providing the circle where people could come and discuss these things. I don't see myself as having a particular view that is accurate that everyone needs to adopt or come on board with. I do notice though that when I tend to explain things from my view, a lot of people feel pollinated in a positive way from that. And I've used that to build an airship from. I've built a lifelong dream of being a philosopher, which I thought was not going to be possible, is suddenly now happening in real time. So I have a lot of experience in my life, but it just doesn't feel good for me to tell you about it. But when I do talk about things, it usually does come from some sort of experience I've had, whether it be professionally, whether it be academically, whether it be socially, whether it be all these things. So yeah, it's hard to pin me down to say this is exactly who and what I am, except for that word sophist. Although writer is a great title, I'm proud of the fact that I write books. So I don't know if that's going to be something that we're going to keep doing as we go into Aquarius, where people are going to read and write books, and it could be that's a dinosaur. But I don't mind being the last of those dinosaurs because I believe literature is a beautiful medium to express ideas.
Right. I think the market for books could be a thing that dies, but then I don't think that the book itself would die. I think that it may even almost honor the book in a certain way by killing it as a market. It's just like, wow, you wrote like this tome? Like, dude, people don't even do that for money anymore. Like,
Hmm.
people really gonna read it now because there wasn't even money in it. It was just purely like you put your mind in there, man. It could, because I mean, like, Heidegger's not the best seller. It's not a sexy book by any means, right?
Hmm.
But it really changes your life when you know how to apply these things, right? And you know, and when it comes to the Mandela effect, it's a wild thing that it's amazing watching a lot of people that it's not their experience of reality. It doesn't flinch their reptile in any for me when I hear it, I'm a little like, huh? Like I get a little like, oh my god, reality just changed from it's just like, and I couldn't believe that wasn't like the knee jerk reaction of someone I thought would know how a thing was, right? I have memories of my dad telling me about Dwight Eisenhower while I'm looking at a dime, and then I asked my dad like 2 weeks ago or something. It was like, Dad, by the way, like, you know who's on the dime, right? And he just looked at me and he just said Franklin Delano Roosevelt without even blinking.
Hmm.
And I said, wow. I told him, I'm actually a little surprised that you answered that way, just because I have. Oh, I'm low? Sure.
Yeah, it's a
Thank you.
couple people have said so,
Okay.
and
Okay. I have this loud Italian projection, so I don't know when I'm too hot.
I think it's the Zoom. I think there's an audio filter. I think that Zoom is interrupting
Okay.
the audio filter,
All
and
right.
it could be that you could change Zoom.
Mm.
I know people really want to hear the conversation, so I hope you
Yeah,
don't
for
mind me
sure.
saying this, but it
Yeah.
could be as simple as you changing there's an audio setting that says stop messing with my audio. It's called it's under. Sorry, I'm trying to find it for you on the screen, but it could just be that all you have to do is tell Zoom to stop doing that,
Oh,
and
okay.
it's
Zoom. I see the is it the audio profile recommended for headset?
Zoom background noise. Yes, yes. Is yours set to Zoom background noise removal?
It's got background noise suppression on low, and that's what it's selected to.
Okay. Maybe try original sound for musicians.
Well, I am a musician. That would make sense. Even
Well,
though,
yeah, it's only because if you've got your own filters on, it could be that that's what's doing it. So I don't know if we both have to have that. But I just changed mine just because we're
okay,
talking about it. And I've
sure,
been told that my audio is good enough, but yours is low. If someone
got
wants
it,
to correct me on that, though, let me know.
gotcha. All right, no, this looks good. Echo cancellation. We'll say stereo audio for fun. All right, that ought to work.
Great.
Okay,
Both
cool.
both good here according to, so that looks like the last vote is that everything's good. Although Jason could have said it was fine anyway. So it's always hard to figure out how that goes. So
Indeed.
although I don't hear if you remember the last time we talked here, and I swear we'll get to the topic, y'all, but the last time we talked, Aerolith, I was telling you about this. It's like I hear something, and for what I don't hear it anymore. It's gone. So I bet you that the audio is spot on now.
Okay, excellent. Yeah,
Although
yeah.
Susie Q just said can't hear Zareleth.
Can't hear me now? Really?
Maybe do some talking. Yeah.
That's odd. Well, yeah. I mean, I was letting James speak more so, and I'm quick to hold my tongue if I'm interrupting. I'll be like, "Da, da, da, da," and it'll sound like I'm being cut off when I'm actually cutting myself off. So it could be that. Can you guys? ML says I'm still really low. What's
Yeah.
going on here? Um. Okay, I'm gonna
That's a
try.
trusted source too. That's tricky,
Ugh.
I know.
Oh, absolutely.
But
All right.
either JC lower volume or Z turn up.
All right. Let me turn
And
this
I can
up.
turn mine down, guys, but
All
I
right. Here we
pretty
go.
much, I have mine on almost taped because
Here.
it seems like I finally
Yeah.
found the audio that works on everything.
Yeah. Because I
So,
have. Yeah. Because I have a pretty strong like mixer board with like slide levels. I'm very cautious about how hot this goes. Right.
yep.
So I'm much hotter now. So it was probably just my physical board, making sure that I'm not bleeding over because I'm I'm a schmuck. I don't like to put on headphones. They bother my ears to all hell.
Well, yeah, that probably has a lot to do with it. I'm not
Yeah,
particularly fond of headphones
yeah,
either,
yeah.
but it
Uh,
kind of comes with the territory.
right, right. Like the way I got my speakers pointed, the way my volume is, 99% of the time, it's never an issue. And
Hmm.
so we should be perfect now. So yeah. So like I was saying, my dad. I had these memories of my dad telling me about it, and then when I told my dad that I had these memories, whatever, like he knows how deep in the sauce I am. He watched me going through doing things on the internet and talking about conspiracies and the Trump phenomenon, things like that. So he didn't look at me like I was crazy. I think he looked at me like I'm legitimately like working like an important thing out because he knows that other people experienced the Mandela, and it probably
Hmm.
wasn't a surprise to him that I experienced the Mandela because my dad is used to me being a big disappointment. So,
Oh,
that's got something to. No, no, it's not a disappointment thing. I think he's much prouder of me now than he ever was. But anyway, um, so that gets into it too, and I'm excited to hear your angle on it because I know that you always have these amazing angles that nobody ever comes from, and that's what I love about you because in many of the groups I hang out with, I bring up something, and I'm the guy with the crazy angle no one ever thought of,
hmm.
right?
Yeah.
And sometimes it can be challenging. Who knows? Maybe you're gonna say that I am having a unique hallucination of reality because you've already talked about how we hallucinate reality. So I think the most firm place to start, like with dealing with our Mandela effect conversation here, is how do we know we're not hallucinating, and how do we know we aren't having false memories, or are we determining that we are, but it's not what we think?
Hmm. Well, for me, I believe that we are hallucinating, and so when everyone was experiencing this thing that we're calling the Mandela effect, I was sort of more like, eh. And I don't mean that in a dismissive way. I mean that more in a why why is everyone upset that reality is fractured because it doesn't work that way anyway. And I don't mean that in a snooty way. I don't even mean that in a we shouldn't talk about it. I'm really glad to finally be able to talk about it. The only opportunities I've had to discuss the Mandela effect have been used to ridicule me, to suggest that I'm closed-minded or that I don't see the truth, or that I'm a CIA operative who's trying to normalize everyone. And this is the first time someone who's actually been willing to say, let's talk about what you think this effect is. And so I think before we can even go there, because first of all, where I'm at is not going to be happy for a lot of you guys. A lot of people do not like the word hallucination because they think that the word hallucination means something that is not real. And that having that construct that there is a real place and that you are in this real place, but that sometimes you accidentally hallucinate this real place wrong, is not going to be a framework for you to have the ability to comprehend my personal position on this. I don't think it's correct, my position. I don't think it's the only one. It's simply zetetically, even before zetetics, I think solipsism dictates all of us to become the sole I, solus, igus, ipes, the Latin for solipsism is the idea that there is only one I. And when you build your cosmology like I have, and I could change, but when you build the cosmology that I have, that there is only one I, the Mandela effect is not an effect, it is a reality. It is just simply the state of mind that you have that changes based on your resolution. The resolution that you're pumping to your monitor, right, is going to be 4K, it's going to be 8K, and if you switch between 720p and all of a sudden you switch to 4K, pixels that you thought were mauve are no longer mauve. Things that you see that used to be a certain color are no longer that color anymore. And to me, I understand the anatomy as to why it works this way. So to me, the Mandela effect is quite natural, and the phenomenon that we're discussing is not the effect, it is the realization of the effect, which is a new thing that consciousness is experiencing now because we finally gained the resolution to sense this kind of stuff.
Indeed. Yeah, yeah. And, it's a question is it going to, are we going to be a one-off kind of generation? Because does the Mandela effect, is it going to be ongoing? I mean, it seems that way. Niagara Falls was Niagara Falls to me up until just a few years ago. Not that far from Niagara Falls. Now it's Niagara, right? It's still Niagara pronounced, but it's spelled Niagara. I'm like, oh, okay, no, there's another new one, and so because we don't have too much of a continuity of seeing it before. We probably weren't like recording it and noticing it. Now, if it truly was something that's always going on, so we have something to now start collecting data and seeing if we can causally work it out. But that's the point, though, is that the retrocausality shifts because the Mandela effect changes the way it always was.
Yeah, but I think it really does come back to, I don't mean but in a contradictory way, except for like to say, but let's bring it back to the only thing you can know, which is that really your video card just got better. Really, that's all that's happening. You're still in the same game. You're still playing the same game, but now you have a rig that has the ability to pump out more frames per second. Not only that, but the resolution that you're seeing each of these details is you're able to put more calories behind it. And we know this. We're seeing colors we've never seen before. We're going to be seeing new colors we've never seen before. We're interpreting smell in deeper ways. We see the inner workings of energy is really the essence of Aquarius. It's not a coincidence that we've entered into this internet era where the petrodollar, the old school world that silver is valuable, and changing that to paper and have everyone go, are you fucking insane? There's no way paper's valuable. And then even to take it now, where now we have digital currency where not only is paper not valuable, but now bits are valuable. Like the ordering of bits is now a kind of gold. And this is an intangible sort of understanding that we've never had before. And the resolution of gaining that kind of thing is fracturing your memories because it has to. And it's important I think it's important that we understand what Heidegger did not, frankly. And that you and I build the construct that there is a past and a future outside of our lives, and that exists a priori, regardless of whether or not we are here. I don't want to take that away from you, or I'm not saying use airless, but I don't want to take that away from anyone who's holding that view. I simply want you to admit that it's all faith-based. That you, my friend, have insisted that that's the reality and there's no tangible way for you to prove it. Meanwhile, all these archetypes, all this symbology, all this history is, I think, really just a spectrum of present until mythology. In other words, at the end of the past, all things are mythology. At our oldest points of history, everything is mythology. None of it tangibly happened. And I know that we want to insist, what the fuck, and now what has to happen, and it's no problem. Yeah, I don't need you to adopt this, but if you can picture that the past is exactly the reality that it's always been. It always has the texture of mythology to it. It's a film-like substance. It's a milky film, almost like that rainbow fluid you may see sometimes floating on the top of the water that many will insist it's gasoline and the planet's killing itself. And it could be gasoline, but also there's a natural process that's coming up out of the mud that causes this film to occur. And only if you have polarized vision are you even going to be able to see it and discern it. So when I think back to C3PO having a silver leg, I did not have a compression that would allow me to store C3PO's silver leg when that was happening for me personally, because it offered no tangible value to store those engrams. So I dropped them. And by dropping them, there's always a method of compression at work. I can show you how the science of MP3 compression, for example, literally produces sound that wasn't there before. It literally conjures sound based on a probability formula of what we could reduce the following 10,000 bits into 64, and that it would still sound the same because we have an understanding about how our ears work, that the exact same thing happens when we render the past and the future, that these are both the same constructs, and it's a construct where we leave the realm of reality where all waves are collapsed, and we sink back into the realm of probability where most waves are not collapsed, right? So present time is simply the conglomeration of your most collapsed waves of your witness and experience of the world. This is like the heart, I believe this is the heart of what you could call quantum metaphysics, right? Is that it really does, it's a tendency. And a tendency is not a reality. A tendency is a conglomeration of water that crests at a certain point. And if your hand is at that level, the probability of you feeling wetness from that is much higher. And we're the ones that have the illusion that there's a surface, right? Yeah. And that in that surface begins the mass collection of molecules, but above that surface they don't. And you and I actually just hallucinate that barrier because it makes it easier for us to divide and conquer the world, to organize it in such a way so we can store the experience and learn from it.
Indeed. Yeah, because I was the same way, right? Like C3PO's leg is one thing, and what's funny is that one's got some of the best residue on the planet because you can go look up all behind the scenes footage from the making of Star Wars, all the stock photos from the making of Star Wars, and C3PO has a regular full gold body like I remember originally. But
yeah, me too.
Only the celluloid changed. That's what's wild, right?
Yeah.
Because otherwise, I was talking about this on Instagram while musing, getting ready, hyping myself up for this, just talking about things like, I love the Mandela effect, but I had to wait for it to get real because I don't care about Gilligan's hat. I care about the fact that South America's moved very east. I care about the fact that my heart is now center mass, et cetera, because these are things that, I have distinct memories of being in school and learning them, right?
Right. And it's really difficult to know which things we which things that we knew that we didn't know, which things that we know that we thought we knew that we don't anymore. And I think that when you start to look at what we call, see, if you come back to this Osiris model, the Osiris model is, I think, the heart of solipsism, because the Osiris model says that you died, and when you entered the underworld, you came here, and you opened your eyes, and you had no memory because you've never been in the underworld before. And so all of your memories are erased because you're here. You are below the horizon of reality. And so you have this journey while you're here where you're judged, and your faithful companion Set, man's best friend, the dogs that we see in our life, in our everyday life, are actually the emanation of this spirit animal, this Set creature that's here to say it's going to be okay. I know you've forgotten it all, but it's going to be okay. And I'm not making this up. I'm telling you what I believe that ancient Egypt believed and understood to be the case. And when you look at it this way, every person's underworld is a personal creation that is made by them so that they may have a journey down the river Styx and be judged. And this judgment is simply the way we animize, meaning all of us individually animize a chemical solution as judgment. And we ask that our heart be weighed, because the weighing of our heart determines, should I go up in this resolution, or in this solution, or should I sink to the bottom of this solution? Which is the place where I go? And ultimately, we are finding ourselves by weighing our own heart and using that to determine where we go, which I think points even more clearly to the idea that we are painting this reality. The sarcophagus is the word that means egg. The whole idea of entering into death, or to west oneself, is to place oneself inside a coffin where all light and all sound and all motion could be removed, and that the only experience that the person could have inside is what is written on the face mask inside the sarcophagus. So what you would picture, most of us think the sarcophagus is important because of what it looks like from the outside, but actually it's all about the inside. And so that whatever is painted is kind of like the spell that's written to you while you're here inside this underworld experience. And we mimic the experience we have now through death, through the rituals that we have. But the entire process comes back to this weighing of the heart. We traverse a river, so goes the ancient Egyptian prayer. We traverse a river, we find an island, we amass on the island, we are judged whether or not we are worthy to return, and we come back, or we don't. And so this journey would be a place where you would need to paint your reality, because it would be about you. It would be about you weighing yourself. And the only way you could do that is to create a kingdom of judges, of opportunities, of experiences, so that you could have that and come back with an authentic answer that Anubis asked you for, which is, are you thumbs up or are you thumbs down? Now, what does that mean? I personally think it means, do you want to come out? Do you want to come out of Gaia? Or are you done? Are you done here, or are you not? And so, to me, all the vitriol, all the pain, all the confusion, all the mandala, all the lost memories, all the gain memories, all the shifting of consciousness, most importantly, all the lies that we see, are simply us having an experience with ourselves and finding our own truth. And so the fact that you have a world that's full of lies really would be the only way that you could render to yourself that you're not quite ready to see the entire truth of this realm. And so we have this mythology of Hades, which I don't want to get us too far in that subject, although we could go there. But to me, the mythology of Hades is the same thing. It's answering this Mandela effect call, in my opinion, because it's telling you all of this is rendered, and the parts that are too painful for you to see, you don't see them. You don't even fucking see them, and that is amazing to me. And that makes memory even more profound than we actually think it is, I think.
Yeah, yeah, no, it absolutely does. It's of the funkiest things. Memory is a big part of Norse mythos in regards with Odin, who is always worried for Munin, his memory crow or his memory raven, when it goes out, that it may not come back, which is kind of an absent-mindedness thing. And then he also runs around with the head of the god of memories, Mimir. And it was the well of memory in which Odin sacrifices his eye, so that way he can always see into the past with one eye at all times.
Yeah, and actually, I mean, I don't mean actually, but one way of looking at the sacrifice of the eye would be he went from seeing through two eyes to seeing through one eye.
Mm-hmm.
That would be the same thing.
Yeah, yeah, precisely. Which
Yeah. And so if you were to return to seeing the world through your pineal, through this first eye, this eye of Ra thing I talk about, then you would be seeing all of Hades, all of the things that you used to hide from yourself because your system wasn't ready for it. You would see them all. And this is the state of epiphany. In fact, the epiphysis, the fucking place inside the brain that actually lights up when we have these kind of experiences is we even intuitively know where this chamber is, where we have this holy sacred movement from two eyes back into one.
Right, and all the implications about the sense of depth, which is involved with that, and how we take it all. We take it all in spatially. As I go through, I'm reading Heidegger. A great deal of the stuff he focused in on in the earlier chapters was your spatial relationship to things as its level of direct aspect of your world, of your reality, what is present in hand, present at hand. He had a handful of terms for different spatial relationships. That was basically the difference between, here it is, oh, look, now I'm holding my cell phone just like that, versus, oh, I got to get up and across the room to go grab something, where now I have to change my entire orientation from this around me to going over there, right? Because of what's out of reach.
And keep in mind that this is, pre-1933. It's like really doesn't even really have a good handle over wireless technology. Certainly it's there, but he's just touching at the nuance of what wireless technology does to philosophy, because philosophy changed dramatically when we started to admit that we could send things through the air through using science, what we'll call science. But see, I can tell you through my Osirian model, I can tell you that COVID is a perfect Mandela effect because the reality of what actually happened versus the reality of what people are willing to accept happened. You and I got to see both sides of that, and we're watching one petrify into the other. We're watching a chemical process where an event happened that people were not willing to accept the raw, pure truth of that event, and so it wasn't seen. This is hence the blank labels. Those labels weren't blank. They weren't blank. They were blank for the people that could not look at the truth of what's happening, and that you and I are not really among a lot of people that are comfortable with what I'm about to say, but that the tangibility of those things does in fact change based on the egregore, because the egregore will collapse far more waves than you and I could ever hope to collapse in a single day. And it's still us. But it is the us that we have said, I cannot associate with this yet. Therefore, it's going to be the monster in the pit that I'm going to try and beat with a bone.
Huh.
It becomes that because the truth has to be in the room. And because you're going to be in the room as the Osiris, the only way your truth can be in the room is dressed as other people, dressed in the costumes of other things, and more importantly, compressed into a field that you can navigate, which is why when we go to a certain place, what we're really doing is unpacking the probability of all the APIs that have been installed in this geolocation. When I go to the south, or when I go to the islands, the API of coconuts is going to be unloaded into my HUD because that is a higher probability of experiences that are able to manifest through the pixels of where I'd be viewing things from. And when we, if, I mean this if, because I don't, where it's a far, I get so much flack from this kind of thinking. But if we can get to a point of steady state where we're thinking about that, much like, if you can remember, if anyone made the journey from ball earth to flat earth, you may, if you know yourself well enough, you're going to remember a time where you woke up and you forgot that the earth was flat, that you forgot that you were rendering it in this different way. And you find yourself slipping back into a cosmology that you thought you'd change, almost like a habit that you have to discipline yourself to hold this new cosmology, because here's what I think why, is because you're operating in the field of the egregore that has a magnetic, almost like peer pressure. It's not almost, it literally is the word peer pressure to adopt the same belief, much like geese would adopt the same pyramid triangle, and it doesn't have to be a conspiracy theory. There's an aerodynamic benefit to entering into a V formation because it becomes easier to fly or navigate across the wind. And belief, I think belief works the same way, that we find schools, we find safety in these schools to believe in these opportunities to hallucinate in an atomic way, in a nuclear way, in a steam-powered way, right? In a psychic way, in an auric way. That's what's coming next. Right now, the technology is less personal, so it's more outside of ourselves. But as we become more comfortable with our own energy, with our own power, our Osiris experience changes like that because our world changes. You went through the same experience, so did I. I watched you a few months ago go through personal growth with your body. You were working out more. You were focusing on that. And that it's just, we don't have the language because people still believe in shit like the Republicans and Democrats. It's just, we're surrounded by this people that believe these old things. And so it just takes longer. But soon we will notice that every day I am a different person, because just as the Egyptians say, every day is an opportunity to enter into a portal, and that portal happens not through a physical manifestation, but through a personal, transformative, transmogrifying type of experience, where you open yourself up to seeing the blue colors that were not there before, or whatever it is you want the analogy to see. So most of the Pharaoh's magic was based on imprint, not what did the Pharaoh see out of his eyes, but what did he see the moment he closed his eyes, what was imprinted in his eyes. Why? This is my theory, Zerlith. I don't have proof of this, but I think the reason why is because he wanted Thoth to record what Thoth saw and have Thoth tell him what this was. He was reaching for the ultimate glue. If you want to kill anyone who's having a debate with you about objective reality, all you simply have to say is that every moment that you've ever had from the moment you've been born has been glued together by a substance called memory, and that we have no tangible way of proving or tracing that happened. That if you take a rabies vaccine, one of the most precision instruments at measuring neuron movement is, believe it or not, is with rabies tracking. And that if I tell you the secret word is keymaster, and I would see where an engram has been written in your brain from me saying that. I could pinpoint which neurons have been changed as a result, but the data is still not there, which means there really is no written record of our memory. And I believe that what Pharaoh was doing was tapping, is actually Falaho, believe it or not, that what Falaho was doing back then was being the ultimate, uh, this ultimate idea of there is a singular I-ness. There is a singular me, and that the experience that I'm having here is my Osiris world, where I've been obliterated into millions of parts, and I've forgotten who I am, and that the whore of Babylon, or Isis herself, is here to reconstruct me by reminding me of who I was, and that this is the Big Bang. The expansion and collapsing of the universe is this Osiris experience, and it's 1,000 million cajillion% you. And before you were born, there was no universe. And after you're dead, there's no universe. And the only reason why people call this idea dangerous is because it's too heavy to pick up. Heidegger could not do it. Most philosophers will not do it because they believe it will be an excuse to lead to a kind of nihilism that leads to a kind of morality in which all of us are raping each other, or whatever the fear is. And that is the proof that we are afraid of the truth. If there's ever been a bigger proof, it's that.
I mean,
it's that no one can philosophically prove that wrong. They're just going to argue against it because it's naughty to think that way.
I certainly think that there's a lot of people that are going to like be the bad example of that. But you know what? I think also if the people that are having the better conversation can talk about that, right? Because, you know, like way back in 2010 when everything was different for me and I was on a different path, you know, I would be out there doing cannabis-based activism in the state of Connecticut. And, you know, and I made a lot of statements to people about like, hey, listen, man, there's a lot of different kinds of people that smoke pot. And there's a lot of people out there that you don't know about. They keep it down low because it is what it is. And I choose to speak up and put myself in the spotlight as an example of, you know, potheads aren't this thing. Some people are like that and they smoke pot. I don't know why, but most people I know are kind of chill on. But you know, like I'm talking to the Hartford, Connecticut Congress in 2010, making little statements like this in testimony, right? Because you have to like speak. You know, and say like, listen, I'm not like the bad apples, and I'm aware that you guys only care about the bad apples because they're giving you a problem, right? And that was always the way I thought about things. And to speak about where responsibility goes, I also wanted to ask you if you, like, when you said that part of the Mandela effect is happening because of an egregore that we created that is doing basically sounds like it's basically the unconscious hallucinating for us, and then we get to experience that as it does it. Is that the right way that you explain that? Can you speak more on that egregore? Because that fascinates me.
Yeah, and that is, I think that you've captured it. And to clarify it even more, I think the reason why we remember Berenstain Bear is because we save a lot of calories. We save about 150 calories. I'm making this number up. But we save about 150 calories if we just call it that. And so we do. And what happens is that as we're decompressing, we develop an ear. People call this what do you call an audiophile? We call this audiophiles. And people are like, yeah, man, it's all about the tubes. If you don't got a tube amp, man, there's no reason to be in a room with you. And they've developed a fidelity that makes them feel great. And that fidelity came from practice, but more importantly, it came from having calories to discern sound better. So they put more tune into their sound. They start to hear things, and they're like, violinists do this. A violinist will tell you there is an F flat, but a guitarist says there ain't no F flat because there ain't no fret that says F flat. So watch what you're saying over there, violini. And there's a whole other spectrum of these other things waiting. So really, you have to look at what you're comfortable with, but more importantly, everything that you're not comfortable with is going. If you remember that the truth is always in the room, all this math becomes super easy because all you have to do is say, what are you comfortable with? Okay, so everything you're not, what is the costume that is going to allow it to be in the room and cause you the least amount of fear? And I think this is what identity is. I think that our parents, our grandparents taught us that identity is a singular, solitary thing that begins at creation and it stays static the entire way through. And the fact that we go to sleep every night, I think is kind of disproves this whole concept. You wake up in a different portal, in a different doorway, and it's giving you the opportunity on purpose. I think it's built into the programming of why we're here. If you're here to have an experience with Anubis, having an underworld where every day you reset and you restart is going to be a much faster way of getting to this final judgment, where you get to measure each of your days. Yeah, you get to measure each of your days, and each of those is going to be a factor into where your heart ends up weighing in on the end. So, if all these things are you, and the egregore is still you, but it's the things that you're not ready to see yet, you can now pretty accurately predict exactly what the egregore is going to say and what it's going to remember. And if you gain power over all, the egregore is going to have to give you power back as you're ready to take it. So you will claim memories that the egregore says are different. There are men that landed on the moon, says the egregore. And then there's you who thinks maybe different. I'm not trying to say all of you are this way. I'm just saying it's a good example. Here's a perfect example where the egregore is insisting that this happened. And the only reason why you doubt the moon landing, honestly, it's not because you're clever, although all of us are clever as fuck. The only reason why you doubted the moon landing is because you could afford it. You could afford it. You've gained the resolution to where you can see things like that. The binary reduces itself into a trinary, so now instead of things being yes or no, they're yes, no, and maybe. Maybe. And what is maybe? That's the quantum, isn't it? You now have the third bit that's giving you the option, and that third bit, it turns into a tetradic kind of formula. Now there's 4, and then to a pentatradic, right? And now there's 5, and then a hexatradic, and the next thing you know, we have a 4K resolution reality now, where we're able to render and see these things. And it would make sense that it would even make sense that the longer we are here, keep in mind you're probably a 200,000-year-old string bean. And so it would make sense that the longer that you're here, the longer that your lotus grows in the mud. Another Egyptian idea is that the Ka of you is the 200,000-year-old you that was planted a long time ago. And that the Ba of you, the flower of you that's floating on the surface, it took 200,000 years to reach this place where it is now. And part of what we're doing in Hades is we're not able to see the bottom yet because, frankly, that kind of scares us, kind of terrifies us to think that we've been here enduring what some of us will call hell. It's literally what everyone calls it. Back then, hell wasn't a bad word, though. It was an acknowledgement that you're living in the world of illusion. And as long as we are willing to acknowledge that, our resolution starts to grow. And I'm telling you, it looks like conspiracy theory. It looks like moon landing hoax. It looks like Mandela effect. It looks like COVID. It looks like Corona. It looks like Klaus Schwab in a fucking tunic, like a slee stack, saying he's going to control the world. It looks like that. And all of it leads to, if you go further enough into the future or further enough back in the past, all of it leads to a steady state of mythology, not reality. It returns to a quantum liquid kind of a state. Heidegger wasn't ready for this yet. He couldn't see this. I think he's done well.
Well,
Like
I mean,
Freud. I think
he
just
did
like
write
Freud,
this.
he was an ice cutter at the time. But right now, I don't think that he could even hang with where you and I are at, simply because he didn't have the resolution to hold those kind of things.
Well, you know, I mean, like, he was also, like I've been saying it, the context of Heidegger, he was a Nazi. He wrote this in Nazi Germany, and it's definitely a book that for the intellectuals of Germany that would have been reading at the time, it was saying, like, listen, guys, you need to get out. I can't tell you, but it's bad news here. You're in a weird, crazy prison. It's going to go bad. Like, I think that there's a whole subtext that he can't touch on. The only thing he can do is do philosophy, and he picked this very hard subject, right? Because he saw something, because the opening of the book is about subject matter and his criticism of subject matter. Oh, okay. Oh, all right. Just letting you know that on my end, the recording has stopped here. I must have told it to record to my smaller external hard drive. So just letting you know that if anything happens to what's archived on YouTube, James will have the full recording. This is off. Anyway,
So I shouldn't even say this, because people have tried to say I should be burned for talking about Hitler sometimes, but I think even Nazi is a Mandela effect. I think that if you went back to the time where people were Nazis, it wasn't anything close to what we think or see or perceive it to be as we do now. And that shift had to happen because we were approaching the Ubermensch. We were approaching this concept of the Ubermensch, of the Superman. We were playing with this idea as a fatherhood, as a fatherland. And I think that it would be, we reached too far for where we currently were at when it came to what we could actually handle. We were reaching out of the pit of slavery, and the hands that were reaching were almost too greedy, because the rest of the body really, really had to pull itself back down into this shame cult of how dare you call yourself Superman. And so I think the emergence of what is happening with the whole Nazi thing is really, and the exact same thing happened with the Confederacy of the South, by the way. Exact same dynamics happen. You're watching the emergence of man and the insistence of man that he submerge because he's afraid of what the emergence will do. And because we do not want to be guilty of being in love with slavery. We do not want to be guilty of being in love with debasing ourselves.
yeah.
We've had to create an artistic ability to debase and lower ourselves. And Nazi Germany, the shifting of what that was necessary.
Yeah.
Because of that egregore. And so the mandala shifted. It literally chunked over. Same thing with Cuba. You want to know why Cuba was bigger and it's smaller now? Because the psychic egregore was trying to make that place bigger and bigger and bigger and more of a threat and more deadly of a threat and a bigger, huge concern. And the entire annihilation of the entire world was based on this island. And so the size of it itself became big in the mythology of us all. And so the mythology of that ends up having the same kind of effects over our memory. I'm not trying to dismiss this, and this is where it bothers me, because we can't talk about this all the time healthily. I want you to understand, though, that this is a huge factor in how our memories are shaped, is the general egregore and the fashion of where it's at the time.
Yeah, I was saying, allegorically, because also fascism is Italy, right? Sicily now,
Mhm.
which is the island. It's now right underneath Italy, and I'm looking at it, and I'm just like, well, isn't that funny? Doesn't Italy look like a boot stomping on a head for eternity?
Mm.
And they brought us fascism along with me and Mr. Mustache. Isn't that just adorable, right? So it's all these cute little little messages from the universe that is part of this hallucination,
Mhm.
or at the very least, it's significant to us who was not uh, hallucinating it the way I guess everyone else was. It's so weird to think about, and it's great that we're not alone. While at the same time, it's also strange about how many people, it's on the norm the other way.
Mhm.
It kind of throws you through a loop. And I know that you've talked a whole lot about like what it means to have things hit our senses and then translate into perception in our mind, so that way I can see you. You're wearing what to my hallucination is kind of like a bluish, dark bluish, a little bit wrinkly long sleeve shirt with its buttons, and you're bald, and you've got kind of like a wooden desk with a thing and a blank, and like all these little details, right? And then is there a Mandela effect in like 4 years from now, and you've got like an evil mustache that I didn't notice? It'll be little things like that. Like it reminds me of the magazines, right? The magazines back in the day where it's, like find 15 things different, and in the both pictures,
Mhm.
when you stand back, they look exactly the same, but then you realize, oh, somebody drew a little cat in that corner, and that's not there in that picture, right?
Mhm.
So that's kind of like what it feels like. And right now, like, because since Mandela effect on various levels, I just sit there and I'm just like, man, I don't know if I could be hyper aware enough. Like, I'm afraid of what it means to like miss the next Mandela effect and not be 100% sure if anything changed at all, right? And you try to be hyper aware of at least the the milestones that you experience, and say like, is this going to be the same in a year from now? Or is the history going to change on me? Right?
Mhm. Yeah, I mean, I get what you're saying. Also, I think that it's a mistake that I think a lot of people make a mistake where they think that you can experience something and then you can remember something, and that those two things are different. And the truth is that you really can't. The To recollect is to collect
Mm-hmm.
again.
Mm-hmm.
To recognize is to cognize again. Every experience that we have, it's a lazy kind of thinking. I'm not accusing you of this. I think this trips people up, though, is that they think that there's a difference, that somehow you can experience something and then later on you can recollect what you experience, and that's just not how our world works. Most of the experiences that we have directly, and Talking to Reptiles is a series I did where I cover a lot of this stuff. So many things happen before and even bypass our recollection of it. Most of the systems that happen in your body, you do not recollect are actually working right now. The last burp or the last digestive move that you made was a decision at some point by some sort of agency, and that agency never went to the head office and said, "Hey, boss, we're gonna burp right now."
Mm.
This proves even more the Osiris model, in my opinion, because it shows you how many systems are running without your memory, without your gnosis of them. So when you think about what happens when you're actually going to a place and experiencing a vista, I think it's fair to say that what you're doing is you're hallucinating. You're hallucinating what would be the highest probability of things being here. And one of the biggest influences of that is the egregoric footprint, fingerprint in space-time of the last person that's there. This is a really important point that Mandela doesn't even get to discuss. If you think about the Rupert Sheldrake is just one of many that have pioneered this idea of morphic resonance, but it's a true bona fide effect where the moment someone solves or sees a certain perspective or renders something into their world that hasn't been seen before, it gives it a quantum jump that instantly across the world others are able to do that thing on a much easier way. And it's in a way they've broken through the veil and they've collapsed that probability into something that's realistically doable. And that this only happens through our expanded resolution of things.
Yeah,
So
it's a 100th monkey technique, right?
well, so I'm not going to say it's not that, although I don't think it's exactly that.
Right.
Only because the 100th monkey is even harder to prove. This kind of morphic resonance is actually happens in crystals. You can grow a crystal in a lab and it will take you 15 years to grow this crystal. And the moment that you figure out how to grow the crystal, anyone in the world can grow that crystal in 3 days. Fucking 3 days.
Yeah.
And there's something about the morphic resonance of reality. The 4-minute mile is something I quote a lot because it's just true. There was a day when that was impossible, just like there was a day when Nazis were like, let's fucking really pull ourselves up by the bootstraps and really hold ourselves to a higher account as being God's children. That is actually Nazism. And I get that, and all the other stuff, and let's bring in fucking Andrew Wilson or whatever to do an expose on how I'm a Nazi lover. But if you want to just fucking look at history, this is what it was. There's a reason why people were called Nazis, because they found the ideals that were there to be very intriguing and to pollinate them. And the reason why so many people hated those ideas is because there were people that found those ideas to be terrifying and they must be stopped. And so every time that you are alchemizing a new version of yourself, you're going to be fighting the imprint, the engram, but in the physical space of reality, you're going to be fighting the engram that was last stored there last, Kronos, the dude who fucking named Saturn. The reason why we know the name of Saturn today is because he was the first to the board. He was the first person that got to write to those pixels and name them. This is such a ancient Solomonic concept, right? You know, the writings of Solomon of to name something is to own something. And it's because it's so intrinsically true to the quantum that to name something for the first time creates an imprint, an engram in the pixels of time and space, and that it rings and it becomes harder to change the name. I didn't say it's impossible, but it becomes harder. And just as the tectonic plates of reality shift, which I think probably is just the Mandela effect expressing itself, really, these tectonic plates that we think are immovable have no choice but to move sometimes when our resolution changes. When the magma underneath our stories, our mythology, gets too hot and it leads to relief pressure because what we think is reality is no longer fitting into the costumes that we gave it the night before, which is why we get this reset every day to wake up and hallucinate the world all over again. And what do we do all night? We get to practice. And when you watch body language, you're looking at people that they say when you lie, you look to a certain direction, or you look up, or when you're recalling something from your past, you look up. And why? Because you're moving your spatial awareness to a certain point, because if you go to a geographical location, you download your storage memories of that location.
Yeah, they say that your eyes move to look at the hemisphere of the brain that you're accessing. If you're lying, You're accessing the right hemisphere of the brain because you're tapping into the imagination, because you have to fabricate your story, as opposed to hitting the left hemisphere of the brain where you're accessing memory. That's the tell that I learned, watching body language people.
Yeah. So keep in mind that
Particularly that
that's
Bombard's body language back in the day.
yeah, that's only going to be accurate if you're dealing with right-handers, though. So if you're someone's left-handed, their creative side's probably going to be on the other side. So because your brain is sort of like a sports car where we just move into it. There's another kind of way of processing these kinds of thoughts even more, though, which is to think about when you're in the holodeck, most of the things that your eyes are for, keep in mind that most of the dopamine, most of the pleasure tokens that come from your body come from your retinas, believe it or not, your retina. So what happens, and men are especially prone to this. This is why men honestly have really hard time not looking at a beautiful woman sometimes. It's literally built in instinctually because so many pleasure circuits are going off by us processing that. And we think it's because we're looking at the pretty woman on the street, but actually what's happening is that we are looking at the memories of the pretty woman. And when we move our eyes into the assemblage point, think about this as like a parabola direction. So we move our eyes to a direction inside of our Plato's cave. The solution that we came up with, the experience that we had when we were looking at that trajectory, we can access in our brain, even though we're not at that location, as long as we move our retinas to that trajectory. So it's kind of like some people aren't going to know what this means, but it's kind of like a microfiche where if you go to grid G28, you're going to find a story about yarn from the 1910s, but only because you know to go to that specific grid. And once you go there, those memories are going to be accessible. This is how I understand the brain. But most of this went into my last book because I found these things to be so profound, because so much of reality is actually limited by the resolution of our phonological loop. That there's a kind of play state that we have where we're constantly keeping things on our desktop. And that really, if you want to look at what reality truly is, it's going to be what's the compression ratio that's necessary to which 7 things I'm going to consider important right now. And those 7 things seem to be pretty paramount. Each of those things can be compressed in their own. So it's not like one thing can represent 1,000 different things. That's how powerful we are, because we can take that 7 and compress the 7 to the 7 to the 7. So the one of 7 things that's important to us could have 7 key points, and those 7 key points could have 7 priorities, and those 7 priorities could have 7 pitfalls that we fear. And that we have the constructual ability to think in that 8-bit kind of mentality. And I would imagine, Zarelith, I'm just imagining this, but it would seem to me that the reason why we can remember 7 things is because we have 7 systems, separate conscious endocrinarian systems in our body, chakras, so to speak. And each of those chakras, I believe, is just able to focus on a different vector, on a different assemblage, right? So one experience has 7 different vectors or sephiroths or vectors that can be stored. So I can remember our experience visually, or I can remember it audibly, or I can remember how it tasted, or I can remember how it felt, right? All those different things are simply the resolution of our limbic system. And as we augment reality right now, which we are, we're going to be changing from 8-bit to 16-bit. And then we're going to be changing to 16-bit to 32-bit. And we're already seeing that now you just said it yourself, through body language. If you picture that the AI is going to be telling you eventually, this person's lying, this person's lying, right? We're now limbically seeing these other dimensions. They're now coming into our reality. The Mandela effect is making them here when they weren't here before, because our resolution's finally ready to receive them.
Yeah, absolutely. Before I move to the next question, real quick, I did want to take a moment to say hi to the chat room. I didn't do it at the beginning of the show. It's nice to see who we got. Hopefully everybody that said hi is still here. So I want to say hi to Thomas. I can't remember some of these guys if they've been here before, if they're your guys or just somebody who I've picked up along the way. We got Jason Talbot, who I know him. My Cherie, she's an awesome person who gets around as a mod friend amongst many groups. She does things like she'll go and take care of a promotion. Like she posted one of your links with like a little brief in the chat room, this kind of thing, a little kindness. The work that she does for everyone that she supports on YouTube. My Cherie's, a boss around here. Adrian, how's it going? Amel Reyes, thank you so much for being here. I appreciate you. Susie Q, a good friend for a very, very long time. Eric C., thank you for being here. Nico Lazaferrer, who earlier on said, please set the vitriol to 11. Aye, mate, 11. Here Now Rad, my friend Jenny, who's real, she's real awesome. She's got her own channel. She does like readings and things like that. And then Beltane, Batman, Bach, Privacy, Love, who he said something about. I asked him for context. He mentioned something I thought I'd bring up. Maybe you know a thing or two about it. The Girl from Ipanema Effect, which I know the song. It's like a bossa nova classic. And then he just said that without context. I asked him to elaborate.
I don't know. Great song. I don't know the effect though.
Yeah. Let me see if he answered. Whoops. Sorry if I missed you. Slick Dissident is here, just because there was a bunch. Let's see. It's the effect James True was describing about men having to view women, except. Okay. It's the very feel of the song itself. I don't know the lyrics too well, right? It's
Now that I think about it, yeah, that makes sense. Yep.
Excellent. Okay, cool. So, thank you so much. I think I just about addressed everyone. D Petrillo, thank you, and one guy, and then everybody's included. Where'd I see him? There was one person I didn't mention. Eric. No, I mentioned Eric. All right. I'm sorry if I've missed you. Okay. Anyway, let's jump back. Let's jump back in. With it, right? How big, like a big thing that is all over, with Heidegger's being in time, with our, our perception of reality, the world, the Dasein, as he's coined it. There's the personal Dasein, our personal hallucination, and then there's the collective hallucination, right? And then Heidegger is always talking about how we're typically in a posture of surrendering to the existential, the Dasein that comes from how other people are. And then through these readings, I was able to talk about so many different concepts with that, like hell is other people, and mythology of Jormungandr, the world serpent, which was highly, highly appropriate. The interplay in our personal lives between our hallucination and then the collective hallucination. Where do we think that line gets drawn?
Well, and that's where I think he failed, and I mean this respectfully, but okay. I think he wasn't able to go full soul. Only one eye, and he's kind of Heidegger's kind of a coward in a lot of ways. Like he actually got one of his professorships, right, by it was like there was a Jew there, and he was like, I'm a former Nazi, but now I'm a reformed Nazi, but I'm also gonna kind of not really complain when I get to be the new head of this chair, this university, because the other guy was a Jew. And I think that all of philosophy should be first seen as humanism. When we look at why people have a cosmology, I think it's important to understand that this is their personal worldview that has no choice but to be reflected in their cosmology. And the idea of time existed outside of Heidegger. And the same idea that time existed outside of himself, so too did God. And so too did this absolutism that did not belong to him. And that's leaving valuable product on the table. And you're leaving that product on the table because, frankly, it's too ineffable to own that much stuff, especially when you are convinced that part of the world is evil. This is why I speak so much about evil. It hurts my career. People don't like it when I try and explain away evil, but I think that when we understand the true nature of what the word evil is, we are more in a siren model, that this whole place is me, or i.e. you. This whole place is you. The voice that is coming from me to your ears right now is your own. You chose the quantum to listen to this link at this moment, at this time. And if the quantum of my voice is reaching you and doing something to you, it is not because I did it. It is because you rendered and hallucinated this because you were ready for this portal to be present in your world today. And this portal wasn't there yesterday. And this portal will either stay or it will be dismissed as evil Nazism by you. And that decision will not be based on an outward morality. It will not be based on an outward ethics or, God forbid, an existential platonic realm where the goodness exists in this other realm. That's not going to fucking happen. You're going to call it evil. You're going to call it good purely based on your appetite to absorb the authenticity of it all. And this is about be the only thing me and Heidegger could agree on is his beautiful definition of authenticity, which is to look into your internal world and understand that you emerged from an external world and climbed into yourself. You did not climb out of yourself. You climbed into yourself and found the self inside the jungle of existentialism, inside this mythos, this Maya. He even used that term, inside this Maya of illusion that other people exist. And this is a highly responsible thought. It requires a special kind of owner to carry this sort of idea. And I think Siddhartha carried it. I think Jesus carried it. Yeah. I think Rama carried it. I think pretty much anyone who's looked at the world in an authentic way has no choice but to carry this same idea, which is that I am all of these things. And my relationship to them is really more based on my ability to accept ownership of this whole place, or to not accept ownership of this whole place. And so we have labels that we use to dismiss things that we just simply don't want to own. So we call someone bad names, or we call someone liar. That's a good one. Yeah. And we insist that they're out to get us, or they're the enemy, or they're the Hottentots, or they're the ninjas, or they're the Democrats, or they're the Chinese. Right? And that all these people are just simply our way of storing information to dismiss things, much like your inbox. You could label things as spam because it's not actually that they're spam. It's that in order for you to navigate through your world, you're going to have this spam that just literally obliterates everything that says, hey, do you want your member to grow? Take this pill. And now you're just like, okay, I don't want to mess with that anymore. So you build a world really based on what you choose to ignore. This is most of the creative process of what we see as reality is what parts of my world am I going to destroy and dismiss? Because the parts that are left, this is subtractive art. This is the art of carving stone versus building something up from wet clay, right? You're chipping away. You're still getting to a reality, but that reality is a piece of art that you've made. My reality says that bunnies are real. My reality says that deer have a limbic connection to the land, and when a deer sees me and seems to know me, it's because the land itself knows me. This is an animistic way of looking at things, and I alone hold that. Yeah. Not alone, but It's a rarity, so we have to, just like a video card, if we're going to hold 60 frames a second, we're going to have our own cooling system. We're going to have our own power supply that's got a little bit more juice in it because we're doing a lot more rendering than the average person is.
Yeah.
We're looking at a world where majority rule determines what's real, because ultimately most of us cannot hold our own weight in front of the egregore. And this is ultimately, I think, the true test of you as an alchemist is, can you hold your reality in the face of a world that tells you no?
Oh, God, yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
and there's so many things that get into all of that, and of course, all of us were put to the trial in those dreaded years a few years ago. You know, we all know what happened. An interesting thing, just thinking about what may or may not be hallucinations and stuff. We're talking about the Germans, so I thought it'd be neat to kind of bring this up, especially for the
Mm-hmm.
hallucination bit. You see, the city of Nuremberg is, we all know it for the Nuremberg trials, but Nuremberg is important for two other historical events. Event number one, I forget the name of the event, but that's the one on the relief where the entire city of Nuremberg saw an anomalous light show in like the 15 or
Mm-hmm.
1600s or something, right? And it
Yep.
seemed like there was like a Death Star in the air and flying rods and
Yeah.
all sorts of wacky stuff that almost looks like machinery. And then before the Nuremberg trials, there was the Nuremberg meetings or whatever it was, the Nuremberg Committee, where they met in
Mm-hmm.
Nuremberg, and this is where the Nazis established the deportation plan that also was how they populated Palestine with Jews, because
Mm-hmm.
they were trying to move them all to Palestine. They were helping the Zionists. That was like the craziest thing, and I think we rationalized that they were lying about it because they had to kill a few of them for whatever reasons, because, hey, listen, I ain't saying the Nazis were doing any good, right? I ain't saying that there weren't some horrible things being done by horrible Germans in the National Socialist Party in those camps. But I'm also looking and seeing that, it makes more sense that they were just trying to kick them out.
Yeah, I see. Countries is a big part of the mandala
Mm.
because, see, we still think that, well, if more people believe it, then the propensity for it to be real must go up, right? If one person believes it, it's probably not real. But if 100 people believe it, then it's probably real. We think that math checks out, and on the micro equations, it does checks out really well. That math checks out in a small group setting. Did you see that? Did you hear that? Yeah, I think I did.
Yeah, 6 million. That sounds about right.
But when you start to get it above your ability to know people, it starts to really get shredded over 100 people. Just to like keep up with them, to maintain a relationship, to give them a deeper engram in your constellation in your mind. And so the egregore really becomes the sole arbiter of that thing, that the same way a video game would. So there's this thing called particle effects where it looks like it's snowing in the game and you're seeing snowflakes, and if you call me and we're both playing the game, we're both going to see snowflakes if we go to a place where it's snowing, but you and I aren't actually seeing the same flakes. We live in a world where we think that we all see the same flakes, but we haven't actually tested that. We really haven't. There's certainly, I can run up to you and say, look at the size of this snowflake, and you would look at it. But that does not prove that all of us are seeing the same snowflakes. That proves that we are able to pull one of the vectors out of a particle equation and create a solid object with it and share it across the space. It doesn't mean that all snowflakes are that way. We
Right.
don't have a way of proving that. And the same thing happens, the objective scientists right now, this is why science is a religion, and I don't mean that as an insult. I think religion is more powerful than science, so I'm actually giving it a promotion. But when you look at the definition of science, that's wrong. The definition of science says that if you do one thing, then anyone else should be able to repeat what you just did and they would see the same result. And that simply isn't true. Not only is it not true, but we're seeing that most of the lab results that we even call science right now can't even be repeated. They've tried. Like 40% could not even be repeated. There's something about the quantum where we made the assumption that it would work. But secondly, let's do a thought experiment. If you and I went to a park and I threw a ball to you, we might argue that objective reality would insist that if anyone went to the park and saw that they would see me throw a ball at exactly the same time. But even that is not true. There's no way to prove that, because once you get more than 8 people in the park, the trajectory of me throwing the ball is now changed by humidity, wind temperature, shadows, and pure nervousness of people watching me. If you take that up to over 100 people, half those people are not even going to be able to observe the ball because other people are going to be in the way. So even our objective insistence that this proves reality is actually not provable. We've made assumptions about that, and those assumptions are wrong. That there's no way to even put 1 million people into a field and watch one person throw a ball and the same thing happens. Yes, we have the World Series. We have a lot of beautiful events, but those events require all of those rendering machines to sit in the same place at the same time and having a collective experience where all of them have agreed to collapse a wave of probability, and everyone's going to insist that the wave collapsed in the same framework. This is not necessarily reality, Zerla. This is an assumption that that's reality, and it's beautiful to assume, and it certainly checks out a lot. But the exact same thing would check out if I was to tell you that, hey, I predict that if you move your character outside of this hut, that this pixel in the top right corner is going to turn blue. And it does. That doesn't mean that there's an inherent blueness to this spot, where you are in the game. It's simply a probability that seems to work out a lot. This really is what we know of things. What we know of things is the predictability is kind of boring to us, so it petrifies into something, and we call that something reality.
Well, this is all of that. I think works with the principles discovered in the double slit experiment, which I don't know if somebody has failed to recreate that experiment by its exact measurements or whatever, but of course, the magic of the double slit experiment is the observer effect, right? And so baseball is a great macrocosm of that, where your baseball is your particle that you are throwing against the wall, and the eyeballs that are making you nervous is you being the center of the group's co-created hallucination, right? It's the same feeling when when the musician gets the meme of, I play like a genius until I hit the record button, right? And then once I'm recording, I sound like sloppy seconds, right? Or it's the merit that, I'm okay. But then all of a sudden, when I'm actually on stage, especially when the crowd is encouraging me, and then it's just like, okay, there was a couple of bad notes, but nobody noticed, and everybody thinks I was the best guy there that night. And I'm like, really? And it's just like, you're almost trying to be humble, and then everybody's just like, no, dude, take a victory lap. No, puff your chest out a bit. We love you right now, right? It's like, oh, okay. Like, so the double slit principle can go either way, because I love looking at it in the terms of human behavior. Now I think more consciously of how something has changed because of my observation of it. Futurama makes that joke. No fair! You changed the results of the race by measuring it!
Yeah. Yeah, I think the double slit experiment is really brilliant, because you could argue that it's a witness experiment, and I've understood it that way, but I think when you look deeper, you start to notice that, especially the more fandangled they make those experiments, where it's a delayed witness and then a delayed possible loss of witness, and then they've really done a lot to really play with that. But the truth is that Somehow the light knows when it's a particle and when it's a wave. Somehow the light knows. I'm saying that the light knows because one of the witnesses that does work in a double slit experiment is other matter. Other matter is allowed to witness something and collapse a wave.
Mm.
This to me is profound because it takes me back to animism, and it proves even more that matter itself is conscious. And that because matter itself is conscious, it's able to witness pressure, it's able to witness heat, it's able to witness light or darkness. And it would be necessary for it to witness it so that the simulation would remain complete. If matter could not witness itself, then we'd be in a mirage of trees that have fallen, that have made no sound. And we would be unable to measure the deciduous decay of ancient rainforests because we didn't have enough witness there to fully collapse the wave and stay with it the whole time.
Yeah.
When you create a life, you enter into a contract of remembering an identity until you can no longer do that anymore. And really what that is I am agreeing to collapse waves around me until I stop. And if you think that all matter does that, then you're looking at a living chemical equation, and that the essence of consciousness is really, really not about life so much as it's about the thought, the record of it. The witnessing of life is more of an intrinsic definition than life itself, which brings us back to a Dasein, as Heidegger would call that's two words, right? It's Das Boot, it's Dasein, it's the being is what he's saying. But he misses it because he's not able to claim, in my opinion, himself as the full entirety of all of those things. You bequeath your ability to witness by creating matter to witness for you. And so it records information. This is why we have photographs. This is why we can write letters. We are imbuing all of these molecules with the ability to remember things that are specific to us and to us alone. And you know this because you can walk into your house and you know, these are my keys. This is my car. This is my cat. This is not my cat, right?
Right.
You know these things because of your quantum relationship that you've had with each of them. Yeah. Additionally, I don't want this to be a sidebar too much, but additionally, when you ask an electrical engineer, what is the exact nanosecond it takes for the electricity when I charge the beginning of a copper wire until the end of the copper wire, can you predict for me the exact length of time it will take before you sense the electricity on the other end? And the answer is no. It's so fucking complicated because of the space between the copper molecules inside the wrapped wire are so intrinsically unique that some of them are a tighter bond, some of them are a looser bond, some of them are more exposed to the environment, some of them are lesser exposed to the environment. And the electrical engineer says, the only way I could give you a solution to that is if I was to build a simulated world where every single copper molecule I could place in relation and then measure it and count, and then I could give you an answer, which should stop the car, because what just fucking happened? The world just told you why it's here. The only supercomputer that would be capable of telling you the precise amount of time it would take for the beginning of electricity to enter a copper wire and to come out the other side would be if we were to create a simulation that could remember itself long enough to do it. And look the fuck around. That's what we've done. So the intelligence of this world is a texture, a world built of memory, of the ability for matter to go to a place and say, I'm wet because rain hit me. I'm rock that is wet. The rock remembers its wetness until it forgets. It remembers its hardness until it is smashed. It remembers its powder until it is reformulated into drywall. It remembers its place when it's nailed back on the wall. all of those things, it stays rigid because it has the ability to experience the simulation, the physics simulation of all the material in this world and hold on to it. And that you and I have created the most sophisticated, amazing supercomputer. It's beyond supercomputer because you and I can go to the Horn of Africa and pick up the same grain of sand that we dropped there 200,000 years ago. And if it's not in the same place, we're going to be able to know and simulate where it must be now based on all the wind and all the weather and all the other memory that happened since. This is so much more profound, I think, than we can truly understand because the entire world is a magma of memory. So the Mandela effect is so much more profound when you start to look at it in this context, if that makes sense. The shifting of the tectonics is really the shifting of its relationship with itself.
Yeah. In in one of my one of my private groups, we do a book club thing, and once a week on Zoom, and we're doing Howdy Mikowski's Exit the Cave, which synchronistically I've heard a few other people independently mention Howdy, and I hadn't really known him much before the book club thing, so it's a bit interesting. He gets into things like Mandela effect, etc. There was a lot of correlation being made for being a reality hacker. There's a chapter where he covers the movie Dark City from the 90s because, of course, the strangers they can tune, right? They have psychokinesis powers, right? They can shape reality from the machine that sits at the core of the flat Earth that they are lost in space in, and everything else. And one of the things that's making me think of when you're talking about how there's the animism in the matter, right? The double slit experiment does this one thing in its interpretation because they're trying to screw people's heads. I always ended up seeing the rational answer from Ken Wheeler's talk on it, because although Ken Wheeler kind of misses, he seemed to miss the point at the time about the observable reality changing the result. Like he kind of misses the point that the observation changes it from being a wave to being just the regular slits where it's just going straight, right? Because if you don't observe it, that's when it's a wave, and when you do observe it, it straightens out like now I won't do it, right? It gets all stubborn, but it's still a particle. He tells you that because he gets this right, he understands the basic physics is that the ether is being perturbated by the way the experiment is being done, and the particle then waves. It's still a particle, but yes, it has this odd property where it waves under these circumstances. But he forgot the part about the observation is when it stops waving, right? So he didn't go there for some strange reason a couple of years ago at the time, right? Because that's what I thought was interesting. It's like, oh, I kind of like that. It's not as crazy as I thought, and I think I can extract more from it by that merit, right? You following me on that? Or are we on the same page?
Well, I personally think that the double slit experiment is misinterpreted on purpose by a lot of people.
Mm.
And I think that it helps their cosmology. And sadly, I think this is what Howdy does. I think that this is a comedian that is now into the world being a soul trap. And he's telling everyone, that it's a certain place that has a certain connotation and that you're being fooled and you have to do these things. And I think that that's just a fetish for slavery expressing itself. And I think most of the philosophy that I read now that purposely misinterprets the double slit experiment as an example is doing that. They're trying to reduce their reality into this kind of place. And it's helpful to create a demon, and it's helpful to especially if you want to like really appeal to the audience, you just simply tell them it's all a soul trap and everything's awful, and that only you know the
Yeah.
uniqueness of how awful it is. And I just hate that. I really find that gross. I think it's I think it's destroying our world collectively, and it's only benefiting those people that are saying that. And so I find it insulting because it misses some fundamentals, one of which is the double slit experiment does not require a person to collapse a wave. That other matter can actually, if the matter has enough of an essence to make an impact on the world, this appears to be the limitation. Does your matter particle have the ability to impact the world? If it does, then it has the ability to thoughtfully change the structure of the pixels that are there. And so if you want to break this down into an ether model, which is fine, pre Michelson Morley or even just them, then you're looking at a three-dimensional, a voxel, a sort of a pixel on acid, a four-dimensional, a five-dimensional voxel, which has the ability to be imbued not with matter, but with spin, which is just memory. All memory is spin. And so you can imbue a certain part, and if that certain part is going to contain the quantum of a bird, then that one voxel is going to have to actually be trillions of voxels to accommodate the algorithm of the bird that is there. So the essence of what's there seems to be the belief that I'm a bird. What seems to be happening in this world is that something hatches out of an egg because it believes that it is a fucking bird. So the voxels are imbued with belief. The pixels of our world are imbued with belief. And when I hear someone talking about the soul trap, it just, it makes me want to gag because it's the oldest philosophy is nihilism. Let's fucking give up. Let's talk about it, how it's all a trap. It's the oldest, laziest form of thinking. And all it does is lower the egregore collectively. And so we end up looking for philosophies that appeal to our ability to honestly put nipple clamps on and just go around bitching about how bad the world is. When the entire time the world is experiencing itself. It's not the humans in the world experiencing the world. The world is experiencing itself because in order for us to truly measure how long it takes for electricity to pass through a copper line, we're going to have to build a simulation where all the spins of all the memories exist that have it there, which brings us back to Kronos. That fucker was the first person that looked up in the sky and said, see that luminary? That is Saturn. That's what it is. And it became impossible for anyone to change the name, or almost impossible for anyone to change the name because we're just simply writing to a defragged hard drive that never gets erased. It simply gets rewritten. And there's ghosts in these machines because the egregore of all the disassociation that we've had is pushed into the black matter, the dark matter of our reality, which ends up having to come back in the room. This is why we have dark matter. We have dark matter because of all the Hades, the insistence that certain things don't exist. So we spam them into the realm of dark matter. We declare them unknowable, unseeable because we cannot fathom the larger intrinsic nature that the world is experiencing itself. And until we are, we're going to be surrounded by people that are lying to you about how the world works. And you should count me in that. None of you should trust me. You should prune my fucking lips. But this is all I've heard since COVID is these ideas that come across, which you're waiting for someone to actually clarify and say what they mean, but they never can because the whole purpose is that they want to create a philosophy of being lost. If you can convince yourself that you're lost, you can convince yourself that you're small. If you can convince yourself that you're small, none of your situations, none of your decisions are going to collapse in such a way where you're hurting others. And if you're not hurting others, you have zero responsibility, which means you can just kick back and relax and just fucking phone it in. And that phoning it in is how we survive in the world. I see nothing wrong with that. All of us have to survive. Survival is morality. But it bastardizes and turns our philosophy into a red light district where people can just come on and just kind of yahoo their way through things without actually thinking about the consequences of how their thoughts are not only lazy enough to not see themselves authentically, but how easy it is to spread the laziness to others because we just assume that someone else has read and done their homework to suggest what they're suggesting about something. And I think that happens more than it doesn't. Present company included. I think I'm as full of shit as anyone else. I really do.
Yeah,
I think if anything is different, I tend to talk about that more than others do.
Well, I think also I think it's indicative with all of us that are on this consciousness kick. Those of us that are, we've put in a lot of effort to be something that is above the world because we finally realize that everything the world wants to do is to rob you of things that are very valuable to you that other people threw away a long time ago and didn't take that, and they took that value for granted anyway, right?
Well, it keeps you out.
Yeah.
It's important that you don't, if you can't own everything, you're going to have to create a story to buffer yourself from that. And so it's calling the world evil is really helpful. In fact, the jungle has that. The first son is the jaguar son. The first son is, you're going to hide in the darkness, motherfucker. You're going to hide because something's going to eat you. So the very first son of consciousness is this being of hidden, of hiding and insisting that one's reality is small. This is how consciousness grows, And so we gain confidence in our ability to predict the environment. And really what we're doing is we're gaining resolution at our ability to own it, right? It's our ability to own the environment.
Yeah.
If you really think about what compassion truly is, Errol, like what is the essence of compassion? You're owning something that used to not belong to you, right? So if I slip into your body and I empathize who and how you're feeling right now, it's because I'm associating you. I'm owning you. I don't mean this disrespectful. I know you know what I mean, but if other people are confused,
you're talking in the. I get it.
I'm becoming you because that's the only way I can compassionate you. And so really my breath of God, my consciousness is growing to include you as part of me. And so I empathize with the world. So if we're going to live in a prison planet, it means every single person I want to touch, I have to first try and find a way to depollinate this idea that they're living in a prison planet. Because they're going to unpollinate me every chance they get to insist that I collapse my reality to accept this idea that we're living a fucking soul trap. And it's just like, okay, here we go again.
Yeah.
Let's wait another 7 generations and we'll try again later with your great grandkids, because we're going to Nazi the fuck out of any ideas that suggest that global animism is a legit reality, right?
Yeah.
Because when you own that responsibility, you have to understand why you're calling someone evil. You have to understand what that word really means. I'm not saying get rid of it. I'm saying to understand the definition of what that word is, which is I am not willing to associate or own or compassionate this kind of witness ever. Therefore, it's evil.
Yeah.
And I think that you're here to lift weight. And that weight is to compassionate things that you find evil. So to me, it goes against the very intrinsic nature of why we're here. A, it's a mystery. Stop trying to solve it. I'm really sick of everyone trying to solve shit around here. It's the most insulting thing you can do, in my opinion. This world is supposed to be ineffable because that's how we pull magic out of latent space. But if we want to de-ineffabilize it, then we have to say, oh, well, here's the true nature of our world, or, oh, it's a simulation, or, oh, it's a reset. You only have 38 years. None of this matters anyway. You're entering into a mantra of just phone it the fuck in, man. Just phone it the fuck in.
Yeah.
But if you adopt this idea that you own it all, now you got to say, how come I'm a Nazi? How come I'm a racist? How come I'm a Zionist? How come I'm all these things? Because you are truly working at alchemizing the entirety of the world by associating into every piece. I don't think everyone should do this. Yeah. I'm more telling you this seems to be my journey, my hermetic journey here. I'm here for the hermetics. So I'm literally here to spiritually elevate myself, even if that means debasing myself to get there. I'm trying to level up in that compassionary way. So I purposely look at things like this. I'm a little bit harder on people like Howdy because of this,
Yeah,
because it's my own personal dogma. So you'll have to
yeah,
forgive
yeah,
me,
yeah,
everyone, if you
yeah.
think I'm being too harsh. I
No,
just think that's dangerous
mm,
because I believe in the
you,
plasma belief so
yeah,
intrinsically.
you should hear me during the like when our book club, like we'll all take turns reading the chapter, and then we'll have the book club discussion about it at the end, and so like I'm 100% with you. Like I argue the point that you're arguing in the book club with my friends, with the guys over there,
Hmm.
and it's quite something because like I throw it through a loop on them. It's just like because I can live here, like dude, I'm having such an awesome time. I want to reincarnate. How about them
Hmm.
apples? I know, I get it. I'm gonna forget things, and it's probably gonna suck. But
Hmm.
man, it got really good the second half of my life, right?
Hmm.
You know, it's that kind of thing, right? And it's like, because I believe that this place is actually it for everybody,
Right.
right? And that it's just a you know, it's part of a mastery, it's part of the self expression, and I think a lot of people are just not really thinking clearly, right? I think the Buddhists, the traditional Buddhists that want to get out of reincarnation also aren't thinking clearly because we're so certain that these other realms that we've probably been to in between lives is something that we want to work really hard to keep ourselves out of this realm, certainly, right?
Hmm.
And a lot of people, you know, they can go through a tough life, or they're really into understanding the reality of the world, but unfortunately it's looking at it through the negative lens, and that's got them racked out, and so they're gonna be on that kind of a kick, right? And um, so yeah, it's really great being able to share those opinions of dissent and everything else, and with that, I think like we're approaching 8 o'clock. We're approaching about the 2 hour mark. I think that we've nailed like all the things. This went
Hmm.
well beyond my outline of questions, and I knew you had something cooked up. You had a really good thing to talk about on my channel here. Thank you so much, James. You really honored me. Please spend a few minutes. Once you sell people on your channel, your Patreon, your books, the Black Eye Club. I haven't read it yet, guys. I've read Technology Belief, and I have Ark of the Baphomet, and I need to get into James's other books in time. And James also has another one that I'll eventually have to read, Black Eye Club, that he just came out with. So go ahead, James, do the business.
Well, I think that it's important that you find a philosophy, kind of like a fashion that holds your posture a certain way, and and collectively you're going to look for other people that help you hold that posture. And this really is your ultimately your identity. It's going to be who you are. It's going to change you fundamentally. Because of that, a lot of my writing deals with that posture. Blueprints of Mind Control is a book that I wrote that probably starts you on that street, because you just start to realize just how many people are actually lying to you, and they don't even know that they're lying.
Mm,
They don't even know.
mm,
And so I think if you were interested in that, you could start with that Blueprints of Mind Control, and then it would lead you to this non-rational place, an irrational place,
mm,
where I encourage you to rebuild your world, but make it into an anatomically correct moral place that doesn't have excuses for you to phone it in. And so technology belief kind of helps you get there. It instills in you the concept of why the entire world is actually based on belief. It's not a metaphor. It's just simply a denialism that we have, about what makes the world the way it is. Um, so if that interests you, you can check out my work. And I don't mean to dismiss. I already have. I've dismissed Howdy, and I sort of dismissed Ken Wheeler, and I'm sorry. I find that their thinking to be just intrinsically dangerous to the plasma I'm trying to put out.
Mm, mm.
And even worse is that they do so much better than I do. Howdy's book does so well. Everyone's buying that and really into that. And my book doesn't. I barely have 9 reviews. So you really need to prune my lips and understand that I'm a human and that I have all these other things that are going to be factors in those things.
Yeah.
And, I just hope that I'm just showing you that, to me, ultimately, the path is authenticity. It's just to constantly be looking at who you think you are versus who you think you wanted to be. And I don't know a lot of people that are really doing that work. They're more about, here's the solution, or here's the secret code no one else knows. And I think that's getting us farther away from where we need to be. But that's just me, That's just
Yeah,
me.
yeah,
So.
yeah. I cited, I just cited them as just a quick reference, just because I couldn't get into, I didn't want to get into a deeper premise setup, so I just kind of gave it a primer because I wanted.
Yeah, yeah,
Because
and
obviously
I
it's your
need to
time to
watch what I
fame,
say
yeah.
more, but I also think that the sophistry is necessary for
Yes.
people to see that in the post-corona atmosphere, we're going to forget a lot, and the same mind wars are going to continue.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's tougher out there now, personally, because of that.
Mm.
And with the higher resolution, there's a lot more stories around, and the stories are either gonna improve your posture or make it worse. And ultimately, that should be your truth. Your truth shouldn't actually be what you think is the truth. Your truth should be what pulls your ship through the current better.
Oh
And that's
yeah.
why I wrote Technology of Belief. It really is about what belief can you build that will cause you to feel the most authentic and get you to that, whatever the destination. I mean, I don't even think there should be a destination. I think you
Yeah.
should just enjoy sailing. But, authentically just find yourself in that. And,
Yeah.
I've
Yeah.
just proved my lips,
I
I'm just one guy.
like, cause like part of me has kind of embraced like quote unquote hero archetypes, and hero that even, in the Egyptian mythos, I believe Horus is etymologically related to hero because he is kind of like a god of vengeance, and in parts of his story it's very similar to Vidar, who's Odin's son, who
Mm.
slays Fenrir after Fenrir consumes Odin, right? And so, we were supposed to be in this Crowleyan aeon of Horus, which, it means one thing in one respect, but also, I mean, with all the superhero films, yeah, we've kind of been like with that, and if I can be
Yeah.
nothing more than my own personal hero, or just the guy who is the hero at my job, whatever, because that's what's asked for, right? I'm not.
Yeah.
This isn't unsolicited heroism.
Yeah. Yeah. I think Marvel is just Nazism. The ideas of Nazism before they were painted so badly. Marvel is just expressing Ubermensch. They're just expressing the idea of the superhero,
Right,
and
right.
the average person is the superhero, but they have to hide their identity. And the reason why they hide their identity is because we're not ready to own our Ubermensch yet. We're not ready to own our superpowers yet. That's why we call
Yeah,
them mutant powers,
yeah, yeah, yeah,
because you're watching this same dance with our denialism,
yeah.
and we're going to find the stories that allow our denialism to survive, and we're going to
Oh
cling to
yeah,
those, and those are going to be the most popular, always.
yeah,
And that's the fashion of culture versus, but see, this is what
yeah,
Heidegger talks
yeah.
about, is the first self is the group self. The first being is all being. The beingness of the animal is not an autonomous self-generating I-ness yet. The I-ness emerges from the group. So the egregore is you, and the I-ness
Yeah.
either emerges from that or it doesn't. And not all cells have a nucleus. So not all life
Mm,
forms need an I.
mm.
And so when you were watching other people and you're watching the sophistry, including mine, you're really watching people look for a comfortable spot to call their eye and parking it there. And that's great. We're gonna come up with the best uniform, to navigate, and it's gonna be a psychic uniform that's based on the boundaries of our identity and who and what we call ourselves versus really what we're just simply saying is not self. Because there are two things in the world. There's the self and there's the not self. And the not self is the self just rejected.
Mm.
And I think ultimately, if you're going to be a zetetic, if you're going to be a flat earther too, sorry, but it's true. If you're going to be a flat earther, you're going to have to look at zetics. If you're going to be a zetetic, you're going to have to. I know this sounds shameful, but you're going to have to look at this concept of philosophy would call it the. I'm sorry, I'm having trouble saying this word right now. The solipsy. And if you were to look at that word, it would challenge you the most. It would be the biggest lift you could do at the gym, and you would come out with a cosmology that I think would lead us into a better model of Aquarius going forward.
Absolutely. Thank you. I think that's the perfect place to end it. You guys, thank
Yeah,
you
good to see
so
you, buddy.
much for coming through and everything else. I'm gonna play the little end card I got here with my little guitar riff, and then we're gonna kill it. Maybe James, hang out for 1 second so I can say goodbye on with you off air. All right, guys, take care.